Chapter 1. Ashes of Vengeance. Dawn brought a new light to the city, a light of hope and renewal, but for Jack Malone, that light was about to be extinguished. He drove back to his residence, the events of the past few weeks still weighing on his mind. The fall of the Brotherhood of the Mask had been a victory, but Jack knew the ramifications of that victory were still to come. As he turned the corner to his street, a chill ran down his spine. There, on the horizon, a column of black smoke rose into the sky. Accelerating, Jack saw his house engulfed in flames, the unbearable heat and the crackling of burning wood echoing in his ears. "My God!" Jack exclaimed, jumping out of the car and running toward the house. The heat was intense, but he needed to check if anyone was inside, if everything was lost. As he tried to get closer, two firefighters held him back, preventing him from entering. "You can't go in, sir. It's too dangerous." "My house. My things," Jack stammered, staring helplessly at the fire consuming everything he owned. One of the firefighters, with a grave expression, pointed to something on the ground near the entrance. Jack approached and saw a large stone with a note attached to it. His hands trembled as he picked up the paper, his eyes widening as he read the message. "You think you'll get away with all the arrests, detective?" The threat was clear, a direct message from someone unhappy with the fall of the Brotherhood of the Mask. Jack felt anger and determination rise within him. He didn't know who was behind this attack, but he knew he wouldn't rest until he found out. The sound of sirens and the chaos around him seemed to fade as he focused on the message. Whoever it was, they were willing to do anything for revenge. Jack knew he had made powerful enemies, but this boldness indicated something more personal, deeper. "Malone!" shouted a familiar voice. It was Lieutenant Harris, who had just arrived at the scene. "What happened here?" "Someone is sending a message," said Jack, handing the note to Harris. "They want me to know I'm not out of danger, that the Brotherhood arrests were just the beginning." Harris read the note, his expression growing grim. "This is serious, Jack. We need to find out who's behind this before they do something worse." Jack nodded, his gaze fixed on the flames devouring his house. "We need to start from scratch, review everyone involved with the Brotherhood, anyone who might want revenge." As the firefighting team struggled to control the blaze, Jack and Harris began to formulate a plan. Jack knew he needed a safe place to stay, and Harris offered his help. "You can stay at my place until we sort this out," said Harris. "But we need to be careful. If they know where you live, they might know where I live too." Jack appreciated the offer, knowing he didn't have many options. He picked up his phone and called Raphael. "Raph, I'm in trouble. My house was set on fire. I need you to start tracking any communication that might lead us to the culprits." "Got it, Jack. I'll start working on it right now," replied Raphael, his concern evident in his voice. Jack hung up the phone, feeling the weight of the situation. He knew he was entering a new phase in his fight against crime, a phase where his enemies were more elusive and dangerous. But he was ready. He had faced darkness before, and he was determined to face it again. As the smoke still rose in the air, Jack and Harris walked away, already planning their next steps. Jack knew this battle would be long and dangerous, but he was prepared for anything. He would not be intimidated. The vengeance of his enemies only fueled his determination. Chapter 2. Shadows of the Past. Jack Malone felt the weight of Harris's gaze as they got into the car, the flames consuming his house reflected in the lieutenant's eyes, and both knew the situation was grave. The city Jack loved now seemed darker, more dangerous. Harris drove in silence to his home, a modest but secure place. Meanwhile, Jack tried to process everything. The message left on the stone was clear. He was in the crosshairs of someone vengeful. "Do you think it was someone from the Brotherhood?" Harris, finally, broke the silence. "It's possible," Jack replied, rubbing his temples. But it could also be someone from outside, someone who saw an opportunity with their downfall. When they reached Harris's house, Jack grabbed his things from the destroyed car and went inside. Harris's wife, Linda, greeted them with a concerned expression, but offered coffee and a place for Jack to settle. After a brief rest, Jack got back to work. He sat up in the living room, spreading documents and photos on the coffee table. He needed to understand who might be behind the attack. Linda brought a cup of strong coffee for Jack. "If you need anything, just call," she said softly, before leaving to give them privacy. Harris sat next to Jack, examining the documents. "Where do we start?" Jack looked at the pile of photos of the imprisoned Brotherhood members. "We need to review each one of these guys. Who had the most to lose? Who had the resources to organize an attack like this?" Raphael called with important news. "Jack, I found something, a series of encrypted messages sent from one of the Brotherhood members, even after their arrest. It looks like there's a bigger network than we thought." "Great work, Raph. Can you trace the origin of these messages?" Jack asked, his mind already working on new theories. "I'm on it, but it's going to take some time. The encryption is sophisticated. It seems whoever is behind this is a real professional." While Raphael worked on the messages, Jack and Harris decided to interrogate the imprisoned Brotherhood members. Perhaps someone would be willing to talk under the right pressure. The next morning, they went to the maximum security prison, where the Brotherhood leaders were detained. The first to be interrogated was a man named Lorenzo, known for his fierce loyalty to the organization. Jack entered the interrogation room with Harris by his side. Lorenzo was handcuffed to the table, his eyes filled with disdain. "Good morning, Lorenzo," Jack said, sitting across from him. "We have a few questions for you." Lorenzo laughed, a cold, disdainful sound. "You think you'll get anything from me? I'm no traitor." Jack placed the photo of his burning house on the table. "This happened last night. Someone is sending a message. If you know anything, now is the time to speak." Lorenzo looked at the photo, his smile slowly fading. "I don't know anything about that, but I know the Brotherhood has powerful allies outside these walls. If someone did this, it was for a reason." "Who are these allies?" Harris pressed, leaning forward. Lorenzo hesitated, his eyes nervous. "I've heard of a group, older and more dangerous. They call themselves the Guardians. They say they are the true leaders behind the Brotherhood." Jack exchanged a look with Harris. This was new and potentially crucial information. "And where do we find these Guardians?" Lorenzo shook his head. "I don't know. They're ghosts, operating in the shadows. But if they're involved, you're dealing with forces beyond your comprehension, Detective." Back at Harris's house, Jack sat down to process what he had learned. The Guardians, a group even more dangerous than the Brotherhood, operating in the shadows. He knew he would need more than just courage to face them. He would need intelligence, allies, and an unyielding plan. Harris placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "We'll get them, Jack, whoever they are, wherever they are." Jack nodded, determination shining in his eyes. "We will, Harris. I won't let them intimidate me. I'll see this investigation through to the end, no matter what." Chapter 3. Echoes of the Past. Jack Malone was immersed in a world of secrets and shadows. The information about the Guardians added a new layer of complexity to the investigation. He knew he was dealing with an organization that hid in the shadows and manipulated events invisibly. It was like fighting a ghost. Back at Harris's house, Jack was reviewing the documents and notes he had on the Brotherhood and any possible mentions of the Guardians. Fatigue was starting to take over, but he knew he couldn't stop. "Jack, you need to rest," Harris said, entering the room with a steaming cup of coffee. "You won't get anywhere if you're exhausted." Jack accepted the coffee with a nod. "I know, Harris, but every minute counts. The Guardians are dangerous, and they've already shown what they're capable of." As they reviewed the documents, Jack's phone rang. It was Raphael. "Jack, I have something. I managed to decipher part of the messages. They mention a name, Evelyn Drake. She seems to be an important figure within the Guardians. Evelyn Drake, Jack repeated, jotting down the name. Do you know where we can find her? I'm working on it, but so far all I have are some addresses that might be false leads. She's careful. Jack thanked him and hung up, feeling a renewed wave of determination. Harris, we have a name. Evelyn Drake. We need to find out everything about her. Meanwhile, Raphael continued scouring the internet and underground information networks for any clues about Evelyn Drake. The name appeared in various lists of exclusive events and elite circles, indicating she moved among the powerful in society. Jack and Harris started visiting the addresses provided by Raphael, each one revealing new details about how extensive the Guardian's influence was. In an abandoned mansion in the suburbs, they found burnt documents and a damaged computer. Someone was here before us, Harris said, looking around the ruined room. Probably trying to erase any trace. Jack found a half-burnt piece of paper with a partially legible address. Looks like we have another place to check out. They headed to the new address, an apparently abandoned warehouse in the industrial part of the city. The place was dark and silent, but Jack felt a shiver of anticipation. He knew they were getting closer to the truth. As they entered the warehouse, they were met with an oppressive silence. Jack drew his gun, his senses on high alert. "Stay behind me, Harris." The two advanced through the warehouse, each step echoing in the empty space. They found a locked door at the back. Jack kicked it open, revealing a room filled with surveillance equipment and more scattered documents. "This looks like an observation post," Harris said, looking around. They were monitoring something or someone. Jack approached a table full of papers. Among them, he found a photo of Evelyn Drake, a middle-aged woman with a cold, determined expression. Behind the photo was a note, "Meeting at Hotel Majestic, midnight." "We have a meeting scheduled," Jack said, showing the photo and note to Harris. "Let's catch Evelyn at the Hotel Majestic." That night, Jack and Harris prepared for the operation. They knew they were entering enemy territory and needed to be careful. They arrived at the Hotel Majestic discreetly, wearing civilian clothes to avoid drawing attention. Inside the hotel, the opulence contrasted with the tension Jack felt. He and Harris mingled with the guests, observing every movement. At midnight, they saw Evelyn Drake enter the lobby, accompanied by two burly men. Jack signaled to Harris, and they followed Evelyn discreetly to a private conference room. They waited for the right moment, and when Evelyn and her guards were distracted, Jack and Harris sprang into action. "Police! Everyone freeze!" Harris shouted, gun in hand. Evelyn turned, surprise etched on her face. "Who are you?" she asked, trying to maintain her composure. "We're the ones who are going to shut down your operation," Jack said, approaching. "It's time to answer for your crimes, Evelyn." Before they could handcuff Evelyn, one of the guards drew a gun. An intense shootout ensued, bullets ricocheting off walls and windows. Harris was grazed on the arm, but continued to fight with determination. Jack managed to take down one of the guards and disarm the other. Evelyn tried to escape through the back exit, but Jack intercepted her, pointing his gun directly at her. "It's over, Evelyn," Jack said, panting. "You're going to tell us everything about the Guardians." Evelyn raised her hands, resigned. "You have no idea what you're up against. This is just the surface. There's much more hidden in the shadows." Jack handcuffed Evelyn and led her out of the hotel, where Harris was waiting with reinforcements. "We'll find out everything, Evelyn, and we'll dismantle your organization piece by piece." As they escorted her to the police car, Jack felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The battle against the Guardians was just beginning, but with Evelyn Drake in custody, he had a real chance to expose and dismantle the secret organization. Chapter 4. Ambush at Harris's house. The sun was setting, painting the sky with a deep orange hue, After a long and exhausting day, Jack Malone felt the weight of the last 24 hours on his shoulders. Evelyn Drake was in custody, but Jack knew the battle was far from over. He needed answers, and knew that the documents and clues he had about the Guardians could provide a clearer picture. He headed to Harris's house, where he and the lieutenant had set up a temporary base for the investigation. The street was quiet, but something in the atmosphere felt off. Jack parked the car in front of the house and, as he stepped out, noticed 3 black cars slowly approaching from the end of the street. His detective instincts kicked in. Jack's heart raced, adrenaline surging through his veins. He grabbed his gun and ran to Harris's door, pounding urgently. "Harris, we have company." The door opened quickly, and Harris, with a grave expression, let Jack in. "What's going on, Jack?" "Black cars on the street. I have a bad feeling about this." Before Harris could respond, the cars screeched to a halt, and 10 hooded men emerged, weapons drawn. Without warning, they opened fire, spraying bullets at the house. The deafening sound of bullets piercing walls and shattering glass filled the air. "Take cover now!" Jack shouted, pulling Harris behind a solid wall. Bullets continued to fly, fragments of wood and plaster exploding around them. Jack returned fire, aiming through the broken windows. Harris did the same, trying to keep the attackers at bay. "We need to get out of here! We're surrounded!" Harris yelled, reloading his weapon. Jack looked around frantically, searching for an exit. "Through the back door, let's go!" They moved quickly through the house, staying low as bullets continued to rain down. They reached the kitchen, where Jack kicked open the back door, leading them into the yard. The hooded men were close behind, advancing rapidly through the house. In the yard, Jack and Harris found cover behind a tool shed. Jack pulled out his phone and called Raphael. "Raph, we're under attack at Harris's house. Send reinforcements now." "I'm on my way," Raphael replied, urgency in his voice. Jack and Harris continued to exchange fire with the attackers, but they were outnumbered and running low on ammunition. "They're trying to take us out before we can uncover more," Jack panted. "We won't let that happen," Harris responded, determined. The attackers began to circle the shed, closing in slowly. Jack knew they needed a quick plan. "I'll go out and draw their attention. You use the distraction to take out the ones on the side. Got it?" Harris nodded. "Be careful, Jack." Jack stepped out from behind the shed, firing his gun to draw the attention of the hooded men. 3 of them turned towards him, and Jack dove behind a low wall, continuing to shoot. Meanwhile, Harris slipped around the side, surprising and taking down 2 of the men. But there were still too many attackers. Jack was running out of bullets when he heard police sirens approaching. Raphael and the reinforcements had finally arrived. "Police, drop your weapons and surrender!" Raphael shouted as he arrived with the team. The hooded men hesitated but continued to shoot. The firefight intensified, but with the arrival of reinforcements, the attackers were quickly overwhelmed. Some were killed in the confrontation, while others were captured. When the dust finally settled, Jack and Harris emerged from their hiding spots, both exhausted and covered in dust. Raphael ran up to them, relieved to see them safe. "Are you guys okay?" Raphael asked. "Yes, thanks to you," Jack replied, breathing heavily. "But we need to find out who sent these men, and fast." As the prisoners were taken away, Jack and Harris knew that the fight against the Guardians was far from over. But they had survived another attack, and with that, their determination only grew stronger. Jack looked at Harris, his partner and friend. "We'll find out who's behind this, Harris, and we'll bring them down." Harris nodded, his eyes shining with renewed determination. "To the end, Jack." Chapter 5. Hunt in the Night. The adrenaline from the attack at Harris's house was still pulsing through Jack Malone's veins. He and Harris knew that the war against the Guardians was only beginning. The ambush demonstrated how dangerous and determined their enemies were. But Jack was even more determined to dismantle the organization. After ensuring that Linda, Harris's wife, was safe with relatives, Jack and Harris returned to their improvised office. They needed to reassess their next steps with caution. "We have to find out who these men are," Jack said, looking at the documents scattered across the table. "Every detail matters now." Harris nodded, examining the faces and names of the captured prisoners. "These guys will talk, Jack. And we'll make sure it happens." While Harris coordinated the interrogations of the prisoners, Jack decided to investigate more about Evelyn Drake. He knew that, despite being in custody, she might still have powerful contacts and allies on the loose. Jack needed answers, and most importantly, needed to stay one step ahead of the Guardians. He called Raphael. "Raph, I need something. I need you to find out everything about the places Evelyn frequented. Every contact, every meeting. Can you do that?" "Leave it to me, Jack. I'll start digging right now." While Raphael worked, Jack and Harris focused on the prisoners. They interrogated one of the captured men, a burly fellow with a defiant look. He was handcuffed to a metal table in the interrogation room, surrounded by Jack and Harris. "Who sent you?" Jack asked, his voice firm and controlled. The man laughed, a dry and bitter sound. "You think you can break me? You don't know who you're dealing with." Harris leaned over the table, his eyes fixed on the prisoner. "We have all the time in the world. You'll talk, or we'll make sure you spend the rest of your life behind bars." The man remained silent, but the determination in his eyes began to waver. Jack knew they needed a different approach. "Are you willing to die for them?" Jack asked, changing tactics. "The Guardians didn't hesitate to attack a cop's house. They don't care about you. You're just a pawn in their game." The prisoner finally lowered his head, the silence in the room heavy. "You don't understand. The Guardians are more than an organization. They believe they're shaping the future, and those who aren't with them are against them," Jack finished. "But that doesn't justify murder and terror. Tell us who's behind this. Help us stop this madness." The man sighed, defeated. "I don't know much, but I know Evelyn Drake had an important contact, someone named Victor Crane. He's the real brains behind the Guardians. If you find Crane, you'll find the source of their power." Jack exchanged a significant look with Harris. "Where can we find Victor Crane?" "Last I heard, he was operating out of an abandoned warehouse on the north side of the city. That's all I know, I swear." With this new information, Jack and Harris prepared for the next stage of the hunt. Jack contacted Raphael again, asking for more details about Victor Crane. Raphael promised to deliver everything he found as soon as possible. That night, Jack and Harris headed to the indicated warehouse. The place was shrouded in shadows, a perfect setting for illicit activities. They moved silently, staying out of sight as they approached. Outside the warehouse, Jack saw movement. Several armed men were patrolling the area, illuminated only by a few dim lamps. It was clear they were expecting trouble. "We have to be careful," Harris whispered, assessing the situation. "If they see us, it'll be a bloodbath." Jack agreed, adjusting his gun in its holster. "We'll go in through the side. We need to catch Crane by surprise." They crept through the shadows, circling the warehouse, until they found a partially open window. Jack climbed in first, followed by Harris. The interior was dark, but they could hear voices in the distance. They advanced slowly, each step measured. As they approached the source of the voices, they saw a large room where Victor Crane stood, giving orders to his men. Crane was an imposing man, with a presence that exuded authority. Jack knew they had to act quickly. He signaled to Harris, who prepared a distraction. He threw a smoke grenade into the center of the room, filling the space with a thick haze. "Police! Hands up!" Jack shouted, advancing with his gun drawn. The room exploded into chaos. Gunfire erupted as Crane's men tried to react. Jack and Harris moved swiftly, using the smoke as cover. Jack saw Crane trying to escape through the back door and ran after him. Crane was fast, but Jack caught up with him outside the warehouse. The two fought, exchanging fierce blows. Crane tried to pull a knife, but Jack disarmed him, throwing him to the ground. "It's over, Crane," Jack said, panting. "You'll pay for your crimes." Crane, with a grim smile, replied, "You have no idea what's coming, Malone. The Guardians are just the beginning." As the police arrested Crane and the remaining men, Jack felt a mix of relief and concern. He knew that capturing Crane was a victory, but his words echoed in Jack's mind. There was something bigger, something even more dangerous, lurking. Looking out over the city skyline, Jack knew the fight was far from over. But with Harris, Raphael, and the others by his side, he was ready to face whatever threat lay ahead. Chapter 6. Labyrinth of Conspiracies. Capturing. Victor Crane was a significant victory, but Jack Malone knew there was still much to be done. Crane's words continued to echo in his mind. The Guardians are just the beginning. He sensed that something much larger was at play. Back at the improvised office in Harris's house, Jack and the lieutenant gathered to analyze the information they had. Crane was being interrogated by the police, but so far he hadn't provided anything useful. "We need more information, Jack," Harris said, rubbing his temple in frustration. "Crane isn't going to talk easily. He's willing to go all the way without revealing anything." Jack nodded, looking at the documents and photos spread across the table. "We need a different approach. We have to learn more about this organization. Maybe if we know more about the Guardians, we can find a weak spot." Raphael arrived with a laptop, placing it on the table. "I found something interesting. I managed to access some old files that mention the Guardians. It seems this organization has been around for a long time, and they have deep connections with various power figures in the city." Jack leaned in, examining the documents on the screen. "They have infiltrations in businesses, governments, police forces. This explains how they've managed to operate in the shadows for so long." "There's more," Raphael continued. "I found a list of locations that seem to be meeting points or operation centers for the Guardians. One of them is an old abandoned psychiatric hospital outside the city. It appears to be one of their main operation centers." Jack looked at Harris. "We need to check out that hospital. If it's really an operation center, there might be more information, or even some of the Guardians' leaders there." Harris agreed. "Let's prepare a team and investigate tonight. We need to move quickly and carefully." As night fell, Jack, Harris, Raphael, and a team of officers headed to the abandoned psychiatric hospital. The place had a sinister aura, with broken windows and graffiti-covered walls. The full moon cast long, unsettling shadows over the structure. "Whatever we find here, we need to be ready for anything," Jack said, as the team prepared to enter. They split into groups, exploring different parts of the hospital. Jack and Harris moved down the main corridor, their footsteps echoing off the empty walls. The place was in ruins, but there were signs of recent activity: tracks in the dusty floor, slightly open doors, and a faint smell of cigarette smoke. "Someone's been here recently," Jack murmured. "Asti or." As they approached a room at the back, they heard muffled voices. Jack signaled for Harris to get ready and kicked the door open. Inside, they found a group of men gathered around a table, clearly caught by surprise. "Police! Hands up!" Harris shouted as the team stormed the room. The men tried to react but were quickly subdued. Jack looked around the room, seeing maps, documents, and computers. Everything indicated they were in the right place. As the team arrested the men, Jack began to sift through the documents on the table. He found lists of names, detailed plans, and most alarmingly, a mention of an imminent event called the Ascension. "This doesn't look good," Jack said, showing the document to Harris. "We need to find out what the Ascension is." Back at the office, Jack, Harris, and Raphael began analyzing the information they had gathered. The Ascension appeared to be an event planned to happen soon, but the details were vague. Raphael continued to dig through the digital files, looking for more clues. I found something. It looks like the Ascension is linked to a high-level meeting of the Guardians. They plan to unveil something big, something that could shift the balance of power in the city. We need to find out where and when this will happen, Harris said, urgency clear in his voice. Jack looked at the documents and, in a moment of inspiration, grabbed a city map. They mentioned several meeting points, but there's a pattern. All these locations form a perimeter around a central point. That central point is the old municipal building, now abandoned. Harris looked at the map, quickly understanding. So that's where they plan to meet. We need to prepare, Jack said. If we're going to disrupt the Ascension, we need to be ready for the worst. They won't give up easily. With the plan in mind, Jack, Harris, and Raphael began mobilizing all available resources. They knew this could be the decisive battle against the Guardians. Jack was determined to dismantle the organization once and for all, no matter the cost. As the night progressed, the tension grew. They were about to face the true face of the Guardians and prevent their sinister plan from coming to fruition. Jack knew there was no turning back, but he was ready for anything. Chapter 7. The Heart of Darkness. The night was charged with tension as Jack Malone and his team prepared to storm the old municipal building. Discovering that the Ascension would be held there meant the Guardians were planning something big and imminent. Jack knew they had no time to lose. "Is everyone ready?" Jack asked, adjusting his gun holster. Harris and Raphael nodded, as did the other officers preparing for the operation. "The Ascension is happening tonight. We need to catch the Guardians by surprise and stop any plans they have," Harris said, as the team reviewed the invasion details. They moved silently, advancing through the deserted streets towards the old municipal building. The imposing structure was partially in ruins, but Jack could see faint lights inside, indicating activity. "We need to be quick and quiet," Jack murmured. "If they sense our presence, they might try to flee or, worse, accelerate their plans." Carefully, the team approached the main entrance. Jack signaled for Raphael to hack the security system. After a few minutes, Raphael managed to disable the cameras and unlock the door. "We're in," Raphael said, giving a thumbs up. Jack and Harris led the team through the dark, decaying corridor. Their steps echoed softly as they advanced, each one alert to any sign of danger. As they neared a large central room, they heard voices and saw moving shadows. "They're inside," Harris whispered. "It looks like the meeting is starting." Jack signaled for everyone to get ready. He swung the door open swiftly and stepped into the room, followed by the armed officers. "Police! Hands up! Everyone on the ground!" What followed was chaos. Several members of the Guardians were gathered around a table, documents scattered, and a detailed city map displayed on a screen. The organization's leaders were momentarily shocked but quickly reacted. Gunfire erupted, echoing through the room. Jack and his team responded, advancing with precision and force. Harris moved with agility, taking down one of the henchmen who tried to shoot. Raphael, on the other side of the room, used a column for cover as he protected the officers. In the midst of the shootout, Jack spotted a familiar figure. Evelyn Drake, who had apparently escaped custody, was at the center of the table shouting orders. She tried to flee, but Jack intercepted her, tackling her to the ground. "You're not going anywhere, Evelyn," Jack said, handcuffing her. "It's over." "You don't understand," Evelyn shouted, struggling against the handcuffs. "The Ascension cannot be stopped. It's bigger than all of us." With Evelyn in custody, Jack continued to advance, facing the last remnants of resistance. Finally, the room fell silent, the Guardians subdued and disarmed. But Jack knew something was still wrong. "Raphael, check the computers. We need to find out exactly what the Ascension is," Jack ordered. Raphael ran to one of the terminals and began typing furiously. "I'm accessing the files now. It looks like the Ascension is a plan to detonate explosives at strategic points across the city." They want to cause chaos and disorder to seize control. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. How many points? And where are the explosives? There are 5 main points, Raphael said, examining the digital map. And the explosives are already in position. We need to defuse them immediately. Harris grabbed a radio and started coordinating with other emergency teams. We have little time. We need units at all 5 points now. Jack, you, Raphael, and I will go to the nearest point. They ran out of the building, jumping into cars and speeding to the first location. It was an underground subway station, now empty and deserted. Jack, Harris, and Raphael descended the dark stairs, following the signal from a tracker Raphael had set up. The explosive should be around here, Raphael said, looking at the tracker. Be careful, there might be traps. They moved cautiously, eyes peeled for any sign of danger. Finally, they found the bomb, hidden behind a panel. Raphael began working to defuse it, his fingers moving quickly. We have a few minutes, Raphael said, cutting wires and disabling circuits. We need to be careful. Jack and Harris stood guard, alert for any movement. Time seemed to drag, each second an eternity. Finally, Raphael sighed in relief. Got it. 1 down, 4 to go. They informed the other teams and headed to the next point. Each location was a race against time, defusing explosives and preventing the Guardians from causing more destruction. The night turned into a frenetic marathon, but finally, they managed to disarm the last bomb. Exhausted but victorious, Jack, Harris, and Raphael regrouped at the operations center. We did it, Jack said, looking at his companions. We stopped the ascension. Harris nodded, the relief evident on his face. But we still need to dismantle the Guardians completely. We can't let any of them escape. We'll keep going, Jack said, determined. We'll expose every one of them and ensure they never threaten our city again. With the immediate threat neutralized, Jack knew the fight against the Guardians was far from over. But at least, for now, the city was safe. Chapter 8. Unraveling the Web. The sun began to rise on the horizon, bringing a new morning and a temporary sense of relief. Jack Malone, Harris, and Raphael had managed to defuse all the bombs and stop the ascension, but they knew the fight against the Guardians was far from over. Now, they had a golden opportunity to dismantle the organization once and for all. Back at their improvised office, Jack looked at the city map, marking the locations where the explosives had been found. We need to find out who else is involved and what the Guardians' next steps are, he said, his voice firm and resolute. Raphael was at the computer, sifting through the files and data they had recovered from the old municipal building. I'm finding more information about the organization's members. It looks like the Guardians have infiltrations in various sectors, including government, police, and major corporations. Harris rubbed his chin thoughtfully. If we want to take them down for good, we need to cut off the head of the snake. We need to find the key leaders and expose them. As Raphael continued to work, Jack received an urgent call from an unexpected contact. It was Evelyn Drake, now in custody and apparently willing to cooperate in exchange for protection. Malone, said Evelyn, her voice low and tense. I have information that could be useful, but I need guarantees. Speak, Evelyn, Jack replied, trying to keep calm. If your information is true and useful, we can consider a deal. Evelyn hesitated for a moment before continuing. The Guardians have a secret meeting scheduled for tonight. It will be at the top of a skyscraper in the city center, at the headquarters of one of the corporations they control. The key leaders will be there. Jack exchanged a glance with Harris. If you're lying, Evelyn, it will be the end for you. But if it's true, we can guarantee your safety. I'm not lying, Malone, insisted Evelyn. This is your chance to take them down once and for all. With the new information in hand, Jack, Harris, and Raphael began planning the operation. They knew they couldn't waste this opportunity. They needed to move quickly and with precision. That night, the team prepared for the invasion. The skyscraper in the city center was a fortress of security, but Raphael managed to hack the system to temporarily disable the cameras and alarms. "We have a limited window of time," said Raphael, adjusting his equipment. "We need to get in and out before they notice." Jack, Harris, and a team of elite officers headed to the skyscraper, moving silently through the underground parking lot. They used the maintenance access to climb to the top of the building, where the Guardians' meeting was taking place. When they reached the top floor, they heard voices and saw lights through the glass doors leading to the conference room. Jack signaled for the team to get ready. "Remember, we need to get them all. Let's do this clean and fast." With a swift motion, Jack opened the door, and the team entered the room, guns drawn. "Police, everyone on the ground." The Guardians' leaders were caught by surprise. Some tried to react, but the elite team was prepared. Gunfire echoed through the air as Jack and Harris advanced, taking down the Guardians' security guards. In the center of the room, a tall, imposing man, clearly the main leader, raised his hands in surrender. "Do you really think this will end our organization?" "We are just the tip of the iceberg." "Then we'll keep digging," Jack replied, handcuffing the man. "Who are you, and what are your plans?" The man smiled grimly. "My name is Jonathan Black, and the Guardians are not just an organization, they are an ideology. Cut off one head, and another will grow in its place." "Not if I can stop it," Jack said, as the other leaders were taken into custody. With the main leaders arrested, Jack knew they had dealt a significant blow to the Guardians. But Jonathan Black's words echoed in his mind. He knew the fight against the Guardians' ideology would be long and difficult. Back at the office, Jack, Harris, and Raphael reviewed the confiscated documents and files. "We need to keep dismantling their network," Harris said. "We need to expose everyone involved and ensure they can't regroup." "We have a start," said Raphael, showing a list of names and contacts. "These are the next targets. We'll take down every single one of them." Jack looked at his companions, feeling a renewed sense of determination. "We'll keep going, no matter how long it takes, no matter the cost. We'll make sure the Guardians never threaten our city again." As the night wore on, Jack knew the battle was far from over. But with each step, they were closer to dismantling the Guardians and bringing peace to the city, and he wouldn't rest until that mission was complete. Chapter 9. The End of the Guardians. Dawn brought with it a sense of resolution for Jack Malone and his team. The capture of the Guardians' leaders, including Jonathan Black, had been a significant blow to the organization. However, Jack knew the battle was far from over. They needed to ensure the Guardians couldn't rise from the ashes. Back at the makeshift office, Jack, Harris, and Raphael were immersed in a pile of documents and digital files confiscated during the raid. The task, now, was to trace and completely dismantle the Guardians' network. "We have to make sure every member, every cell of this organization is dismantled," said Jack, the determination clear in his voice. "We can't let them reorganize." Raphael worked tirelessly on the computer, analyzing the data and identifying the Guardians' members and supporters. "I've found a list of names, contacts, and meeting locations. Many of them are influential figures in the city." Harris, with an expression of exhaustion but also of resolution, looked at the list. "We're going to need all the police force available for this. We're going to get every one of them." The following weeks were a marathon of coordinated police operations. Jack and Harris led several raids, arresting Guardians members and confiscating more documents and evidence. Each operation was meticulously planned, aiming to ensure there were no failures. During one of these operations, Jack found an old warehouse used as a hideout by the Guardians. While searching the place, he found a journal belonging to Jonathan Black. Reading it, Jack discovered details about the organization's foundation, its motivations, and future plans. The Guardians started as a movement to correct what they saw as injustices in society, Jack explained to Harris and Raphael as he read the journal. But over time, they turned into something much more sinister. They convinced themselves that the only way to save the city was to completely control it. Raphael, looking through the documents, found something even more disturbing. There's mention of a contingency plan. It seems that if the leaders were captured, there would be a large-scale retaliation attempt. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. We need to find out what this contingency plan is, and stop it. The investigation led them to a series of warehouses on the city's outskirts, where they found evidence of a massive arsenal of weapons and explosives. Jack knew they had to act fast to prevent a disaster. With the full support of the police and special units, Jack and Harris planned an operation to dismantle the Guardians' arsenal. The raid was swift and precise, neutralizing any threat before they could react. As the last of the bombs was deactivated, Jack felt a wave of relief. We did it! The contingency plan was thwarted. Back at the office, Jack, Harris, and Raphael gathered to take a final account of the operation. We've arrested the leaders, dismantled the cells, and neutralized the threats. But we need to ensure this never happens again, said Jack. Harris agreed. We'll work with the government and other agencies to create monitoring and prevention mechanisms. We can't allow an organization like the Guardians to rise again. Raphael, tired but satisfied, added, and we'll stay vigilant. The city will always have enemies in the shadows, but we'll be ready to face them. In the following days, the city began to recover. Newspapers were filled with news about the fall of the Guardians and the heroic efforts of the police. Jack, Harris, and Raphael were recognized for their tireless work and dedication. At a thank-you ceremony, the city's mayor highlighted the importance of their work. Thanks to these brave men, our city is safer. They faced the shadows and brought us back to the light. Jack, accepting the Medal of Honor, felt a mix of pride and responsibility. He knew that despite the victory, the fight against crime and corruption never ended. But with allies like Harris and Raphael, he was ready for any challenge. At the end of the day, as the sun set, Jack returned to his office. He looked out at the city through the window, feeling a renewed determination. The city still had its secrets and dangers, but he was prepared to face whatever came. For every shadow there's a light, Jack murmured to himself, grabbing his hat and heading out to the streets. And I'll be here to make sure the light prevails. And so, Jack Malone, the tireless detective, continued his mission, knowing that although the Guardians had fallen, the true victory was ensuring justice and safety endured forever.